I decided to complete my project on reading comprehension in elementary schools with a focus on my student Brady. So Brady is an 8-year-old third grade boy who is currently struggling with grade level reading comprehension. He often has difficulty decoding harder words and does not give himself comprehension checks as he reads. Given the support and prompting, he can be successful with his grade level reading comprehension, but he does not self-monitor yet. The current challenge with Brady is working to motivate him to be successful on his own, and at times it can be difficult to see what his true capabilities are because he lacks both motivation and effort. And even if he's reading a book about something he enjoys, he claims that he hates reading. Currently, my reading instruction is done with a 1-hour reading workshop block, which has 30 minutes of independent reading and 30 minutes of differentiated literacy group time, which includes work with the teacher in a small group, word work activities on your own, reading on technology, and writing in a journal. In terms of Tier 1 interventions, my research has helped me find a lot of interventions that I can use, maybe add into my classroom that I have right now, or even just slightly alter the way I'm currently doing things. So, for example, I currently teach both reading and writing in a workshop model. I begin each lesson with a 15-minute mini lesson explaining what the task for the day will be. And I do this by using our class Read Aloud to model a skill, such as finding the main idea or determining character traits. So the first Tier 1 intervention that I stumbled upon was to focus on teaching us skills, strategies, and concepts in a mini lesson, followed by independent practice. So for example, looking at the picture next to it, if you were to be teaching the concept of summarizing, having a poster you can reference, using a mentor text to show students how to summarize, and then allowing them to go off on their own and practice that skill. The RTI Action Network is the network that came up with this intervention, and they explain that students who are struggling should be explicitly taught using a focus on skills, strategies, and concepts. So skills would mean students are learning what to do as they read, such as like decoding words and phonics patterns. Strategies would be plans for students to use when they're confused. For example, using a frame for creating a summary of somebody wanted but so then. And lastly, concepts would be main idea and detail, cause and effect, problem and solution, and understanding the structure of what they are reading. The RTI Action Network also mentioned that providing differentiated instruction based on assessment is crucial to Tier 1 interventions. Particularly in Brady's case, Brady struggles with decoding, spelling, sentence structure, and self-monitoring for his comprehension. And based on the assessments I've given him, I often have him do words to words, vocabulary games during our intervention block when I cannot be directly instructing him. But I do still need strategies for him to practice his self-monitoring of his reading comprehension when nobody is there to help him. The last suggestion that the RTI Action Network made was to monitor students regularly on concepts and provide feedback. Each day, students in my class complete a sticky note or a small sheet with a frame created on it related to the task that day. For example, the one that's in front of you that says blank is the kind of person who is blank. He or she is this way because. This is an example of one that is used to determine a character trait for a character. The frame is used to help guide the students with the comprehension of the skill we're working on. If they're using a sticky note, they might just be writing a summary of what they have read. They often keep these sticky notes in their books, which allows me to do a check of 5 to 6 students each day to see how they're doing with all the skills we've been working on. It's a very manageable way for me to check in on how they're doing and assess them. And I also can provide them feedback by leaving my sticky note of feedback on their place where they left off. Additionally, it's a great way for students to track their own progress of the growth that they have made since they began reading their book. In terms of application, Ruth Jones conducted a research study on bridging the gaps in Tier 1 reading interventions in elementary schools and offered many additional suggestions for application of Tier 1 reading instruction. She offered the suggestion that in order to increase a student's reading comprehension, they must also increase their reading fluency. This is because without the ability to read a text smoothly and at a decent speed, much of the understanding of a story is lost. She states that fluency practice that includes a component of comprehension builds on both word recognition and comprehension. She also mentions the benefits of pre-listening to a text. Therefore, I thought one way to apply this idea would be to provide Brady and my other struggling students the opportunity to listen to a text, then read the text themselves and respond to comprehension questions and prompts. Because I have access to iPads in my classroom, my best plan of action would be to have the students use these as a listening device. On the right, I provided a picture of a resource I found online, which would allow students to practice character traits as they're reading, which is our current focus. So it would allow them to scan the QR code at the top, listen to their story, then read the story themselves again, and respond to the comprehension questions. After they've finished, they can scan the QR code at the bottom to receive all of the answers to the questions to determine how they did on their reading comprehension. This also supports Joan's idea that students require immediate feedback for their performance. Ideally, immediate feedback would come from a teacher or an assistant in a classroom. However, it's not always possible, so I thought this could be the next best way of doing so. Additionally, a research study conducted by Yen-Hu Wang analyzed the current strategies children use when reading and determined the productive strategy of a think aloud. Think alouds are not something I'd ever heard of before, but I do now see their value and see how I could incorporate them into my classroom. Wang noted that many people use a combination of cognitive, metacognitive, and social strategies when reading. He explains that when readers think aloud as they read about what they are reading, they are more likely to comprehend their text. Think alouds can be done in a combination of ways, including discussing with a partner or a group, writing down notes while reading, and highlighting. The most important component is that it's not done after you're done reading. It's done throughout the reading process, every few pages. He states that the technique of thinking aloud while reading requires readers to express their thoughts from their short-term memory at specific intervals. This makes covert mental process overt and provides direct evidence in the internal reading process performed by readers while engaging in the task of reading. And he later elaborates that this is one of the best ways to increase reading comprehension. Particularly, research has shown that working with another reader or multiple readers when performing a think aloud can be most beneficial. You can refer to his quote, which explains the importance of the peer interaction. Personally, I feel that I can apply this to my classroom by having students read in small groups or with a partner during our reading workshop time, which are self-led because we're at the point in the year where they can be self-led and not always needing teacher guidance. I would also like to note that it is important that all forms of Tier 1 interventions can be differentiated. For example, using this think aloud strategy, the complexity of the notes taken or conversations had will vary based on student ability. When stopping to give themselves a comprehension check or independently reading, struggling readers may draw a quick picture of what they were visualizing, whereas more advanced readers may be stopping, writing complete summaries, or making predictions about the next chapter. Also, the previous page of the pre-listening strategy and responding to the comprehension questions while reading can be altered for more advanced learners. Obviously, that strategy is originally used for students who might be struggling, but, for example, advanced learners might only listen to the first chapter of a chapter book, and then that will set the tone for the rest of their book. One great way of assessment which I can use is the STAR assessment, which my district takes. The STAR assessment is an online test we take in both reading and math, and the reading assessment really gives a great understanding of where students are and how they're progressing, because as students take this assessment multiple times throughout the year, the questions are always variant, always different, always adapting to those students' abilities, and teachers are able to see their progress throughout the course of the whole year presented in graphs and charts, and you can also see their progress from year to year. And every single test and assessment is aligned with the Common Core standards. Although the STAR assessment will definitely give me a lot of feedback as to how these interventions are working in my classroom. I also think it'll be very important to monitor small group think alouds if I decide to use them, because without proper monitoring and expectations, they could get a little unorganized and unproductive. Here are some ideas of the ways that I can hold students accountable for their work, but I definitely want to ensure that the focus is not them writing a bunch of things down, it's more of them discussing and thinking aloud what is happening in the book. So I feel that one of the best assessments of these groups would be formative assessments and notes that I am taking of how these groups are functioning and how they're working and how their comprehension is increasing. In conclusion, all of this research boils down to 3 basic ideas. One, that combining both fluency and comprehension interventions helps to increase success in both areas. Also, allowing students to have opportunities to collaborate with groups of similar reading levels without teacher guidance is very important. And lastly, providing clear reading instruction and allowing students opportunities to independently apply those reading strategies is also crucial. Any questions I might still be wondering is, how am I going to keep all students engaged and on task when working in these self-guided small groups, doing think alouds, and not have one personality overpower another? Also, how am I going to get students to use these sticky notes and use these self-monitoring strategies independently without having specific requirements? Particularly in mind is students such as Brady, where he doesn't self-monitor. Rather than saying you must do this at least 5 times, how am I going to get him to the point where this is becoming second nature for him?